The stagecoach rumbled into Fort Laramie, Wyoming Territory, on a blistering afternoon in August of 1876, carrying cargo more precious and fragile than gold. A young woman who looked far too terrified to be stepping into her new life as someone's promised wife. Vincent Marlowe stood on the dusty main street outside the general store, his weathered hands gripping his hat as he watched the coach pull to a stop. He had placed that advertisement in the Boston papers 6 months ago, carefully wording it to convey his situation honestly. A rancher of 30 years, established and financially secure, seeking a wife to share his life on the Wyoming plains. He had received 3 responses, but Beatrice Evans's letters had spoken to something in him. She wrote with a careful hand about her love of reading, her desire for a quiet life away from the crowded eastern cities, and her willingness to learn the ways of frontier living. What stepped down from that coach, however, was not the capable woman of 25 he had imagined from her letters. Beatrice emerged into the harsh sunlight with trembling hands clutching a worn carpetbag, her dark brown hair escaping from beneath a simple bonnet. She could not have been more than 18, her face still round with youth, her eyes wide with barely contained panic. She was small and slight, her dress hanging loose on her frame as though she had lost weight during the journey west. When she looked around the rough frontier town with its saloons and muddy streets, her face went pale as milk. Vincent felt his stomach drop. This was not right. Something was very wrong. He approached slowly, not wanting to startle her further. "Miss Evans." She turned those frightened eyes on him and nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "Mr. Marlowe." "Yes, madam." He kept his distance, noting how she flinched slightly at his approach. "I am afraid there has been some confusion. Your letters indicated you were 25 years of age." Color flooded her cheeks, shame mixing with the fear. "Those were my sister's letters. Sarah. She was supposed to come, but she got married 3 weeks before she was to leave. To a shopkeeper in Boston. She did not want to disappoint you or cause you trouble after you had paid for the passage, so she sent me instead." Vincent felt a flash of anger, not at this frightened girl, but at the sister who had foisted her responsibilities onto someone clearly unprepared. "How old are you, Miss Evans?" 18. "Just turned this past April." Her voice was steadier now, though her hands still shook. "I know I am not what you expected. I understand if you want to send me back. I have nowhere to go back to, but I understand." The last part was said with such quiet desperation that Vincent's heart ached. He looked at her properly then, seeing beyond the fear to the exhaustion in her features, the way she swayed slightly on her feet. She had traveled over 1,000 miles to a strange land alone, probably terrified the entire way. "When did you last eat, Miss Evans?" The question seemed to surprise her. "Yesterday morning, I think, in Cheyenne. Come with me." He gestured toward the hotel restaurant across the street. "We need to talk, but not here on the street, and not with you faint from hunger." She hesitated, clearly uncertain whether to trust him, but exhaustion and hunger won out. She followed him across the rutted street, staying several steps behind. The hotel restaurant was quiet in the afternoon lull. Vincent ordered her a substantial meal and coffee, settling for just coffee himself, despite the owner's knowing looks. When the food arrived, Beatrice tried to eat delicately, but her hunger was evident. She made herself slow down, clearly embarrassed by her own need. "Tell me the truth," Vincent said quietly once she had eaten enough to take the edge off. "All of it." Beatrice set down her fork, her eyes fixed on her plate. "My sister Sarah is 5 years older than me. When our parents died last year from influenza, she was caring for me, but she barely made enough as a seamstress. When she saw your advertisement, she thought it was the answer. She could provide for me by sending money back, and she would have a good life." But then she met Thomas, the shopkeeper, and they fell in love very quickly. He proposed and she accepted. And rather than write to me and explain, she sent you in her place. She said I would have a better life here than in Boston, that you seemed like a good man from your letters, that I could learn to be a proper wife. Beatrice finally looked up at him, tears shimmering in her eyes. She gave me all the letters, made me memorize details so you would not know right away, but I cannot lie well. I have never been able to. And when I saw you standing there looking for someone, I knew I could not pretend to be Sarah. Vincent leaned back in his chair, processing this information. The girl was honest, at least. Frightened and far too young, but honest. What would happen if I sent you back to Boston? Sarah and Thomas live in a tiny room above his shop. There is no space for me. I was working in a textile mill before I left, 12 hours a day in the heat and noise. I was coughing blood at night from the lint in the air. She straightened her shoulders, trying for dignity despite her obvious fear. I am not afraid of hard work, Mr. Marlowe. I can learn. I can be useful. But I will not lie to you and say I am ready to be a wife. I am scared of everything here. The journey west was the most terrifying thing I have ever experienced, and that was just sitting in a coach. Her honesty was refreshing in its completeness. Vincent found himself studying her face, seeing the intelligence in those frightened eyes, the determination beneath the fear. She was too young, far too young for what he had wanted, but she was also resourceful enough to admit her limitations. "Here is what I propose," he said finally. "I have a ranch about 5 miles outside of town. It is a good spread with cattle and horses. I have a main house and a smaller cabin that I use when I have hired hands staying. The cabin has not been used in 2 years since my last hand moved on. You would stay there." Hope flickered across her face, quickly tempered by confusion. "I do not understand." "You are too young and too frightened to be thrust into marriage with a stranger. That would not be right or fair, regardless of what your sister promised in those letters. But you are also clearly in need of a safe place, and I am in need of help around the ranch. I propose we wait. You stay in the cabin, I stay in the main house. You help with cooking, garden work, whatever you can manage. In return, you have a roof over your head, food, and safety. No expectations beyond that." "Wait for what?" she asked quietly. "For you to grow up a bit, to decide what you want from life. To see if this land is somewhere you could build a home, or if you would rather I help you return east when you are ready. And if, after time passes, we find we suit each other, then we could reconsider the original arrangement. But there would be no pressure, no obligations beyond honest work and mutual respect." Beatrice stared at him as if he had offered her the moon. "You would do that? Just let me stay without forcing you into a marriage you are not ready for?" "Yes. I am not a man who takes advantage of those weaker than myself, Miss Evans. I had hoped for a partner, someone to share my life with. You are not that person yet. Maybe you will be someday, maybe not. But right now, you are a girl who needs help, and I can provide that." Tears spilled over then, running down her cheeks. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you. Finish your meal," he said gently. "Then we will get you some supplies from the general store and head out to the ranch. You look like you could sleep for a week." "I could," she admitted, wiping at her tears with her napkin. "I barely slept on the journey. I was too frightened." They finished their meal in companionable silence. Vincent paid the bill and led her to the general store, where he outfitted her with practical clothing for ranch work, sturdy boots, a better coat for when winter came, and personal necessities. The storekeeper's wife, Martha Henderson, took Beatrice aside to help with selecting appropriate undergarments and other female necessities, giving Vincent a curious but approving look. "You are a good man, Vincent Marlowe," Martha said quietly as she wrapped the purchases. There are not many who would handle this situation with such grace. The girl has had enough fear in her life, Vincent replied. No need to add to it. He loaded Beatrice and her purchases into his wagon, noting how she sat stiffly beside him as they rolled out of town. The afternoon sun was beginning its descent toward the western mountains, painting the plains in gold and amber. The land stretched out endlessly in all directions, sage brush and grass rippling in the wind. "It is so empty," Beatrice said softly. "I have never seen so much space." "Takes some getting used to," Vincent agreed. "But there is a freedom in it. Room to breathe, room to think. The land has its own beauty once you learn to see it." His ranch came into view as they crested a small rise. The main house was a solid log structure with a wide porch, built to withstand the harsh winters and summer heat. Behind it stood a barn, corrals for the horses, and the smaller cabin he had mentioned. A creek ran through the property, lined with cottonwood trees that provided precious shade. "It is beautiful," Beatrice said, and she sounded like she meant it. Vincent pulled the wagon up to the cabin first. It was smaller than the main house but well built, with a good fireplace, a single room that served as bedroom and living space, and a small attached area for cooking. He had maintained it over the years, knowing he might need it again someday. "It will need airing out and cleaning," he said as he helped her down from the wagon. "But it is sound. I will bring in some firewood while you look around." Beatrice stepped inside cautiously, as if afraid the building might vanish if she moved too quickly. Vincent watched her trail her fingers over the simple furniture, the clean but dusty surfaces. When she turned back to him, there were tears in her eyes again. "I have never had a place of my own," she said. "Never. Even in Boston, I shared a room with Sarah and 2 other seamstresses. This is mine, for as long as you need it," Vincent confirmed. He brought in her bags and the supplies from town, stacking them neatly inside. "I will bring you linens and quilts from the main house. There is a pump outside for water, and the privy is behind those cottonwoods. Cooking can be done here or up at the main house, whatever makes you comfortable." "I should cook for you," Beatrice said quickly. "You are providing all this, the least I can do is cook proper meals. We can sort out routines later. Today, you should rest. Get settled in. Tomorrow will be soon enough to start figuring out how we make this arrangement work." He left her then, giving her privacy to settle in. As he walked back to the main house, he wondered what he had gotten himself into. He had expected a capable woman, ready for the challenges of frontier life. Instead, he had a frightened girl who looked at him like he might turn into a monster at any moment. But he had given his word, and Vincent Marlowe was a man who kept his promises. That evening he brought her a basket with bread, cheese, cold chicken, and a jar of preserves. He also carried linens, quilts, a lamp with extra oil, and matches. She had cleaned the cabin in his absence, swept and dusted, opened the windows to let in fresh air. "Thank you," she said, accepting the basket, "for everything. Get some rest, Miss Evans. The morning comes early on a ranch, but do not feel you need to match my schedule right away. Take the time you need to adjust." He left before she could respond, wanting to give her space to breathe. That night, lying in his own bed in the main house, Vincent stared at the ceiling and thought about the strange turn his life had taken. He had been lonely for years, his days filled with the hard work of ranching but his evenings empty. He had thought a mail-order bride might be the answer, a practical solution to a practical problem. Instead, he had inherited a frightened girl who needed protection more than she needed a husband. And yet, there was something about her honesty, her determination beneath the fear, that intrigued him. She had traveled all this way alone, had admitted the deception rather than try to maintain it, had shown more courage than she probably realized. Maybe this strange situation would work out after all. Beatrice woke to golden sunlight streaming through the cabin windows, and for a moment did not remember where she was. Then it all came back in a rush. The long journey west, the terror of arriving in Fort Laramie, the kind stranger who had offered her something she never expected: time. She dressed in one of the practical skirts and shirtwaists Vincent had bought her the previous day, braiding her hair back in a simple plait. The clothing was sturdy, made for work rather than fashion, and she appreciated the practicality of it. Outside, the morning was cool and fresh, the air so clean it made her head spin after years of breathing Boston's smoke-filled atmosphere. She could hear cattle lowing in the distance, birds singing in the cottonwoods by the creek. It was so peaceful it made her chest ache. She saw smoke rising from the chimney of the main house and assumed Vincent was already awake. Gathering her courage, she walked the short distance between the cabin and the house, her new boots crunching on the gravel. Vincent emerged onto the porch before she reached it, carrying a bucket. He looked startled to see her, then smiled slightly. "Good morning, Miss Evans. I hope you slept well." "Better than I have in months," she admitted. "The quiet is strange. I kept waking up because I could not hear anything. You will get used to it. Eventually you will hear everything: the wind, the cattle, the coyotes at night. The land speaks in its own way." He set down the bucket. "I was just about to tend to the horses. Have you eaten?" "Not yet. I wanted to ask about cooking arrangements. You said I could use the cabin or here." "Here would be easier. The stove is larger and all the supplies are already in place. Come on, I will show you where everything is." He led her into the main house, and Beatrice looked around with interest. It was a masculine space, sturdy furniture and minimal decoration, but it was clean and well maintained. The kitchen area was generous, with a large iron stove, good counter space, and shelves stocked with supplies. "I keep chickens behind the barn for eggs," Vincent explained, showing her the pantry. "Flour, sugar, salt, and other staples are here. I usually eat simple fare, but I would not complain about better cooking. I butchered a steer last month, so there is plenty of beef. Help yourself to whatever you need." "I can make breakfast now if you would like," Beatrice offered, feeling on more solid ground with a task to perform. "That would be welcome. I have morning chores to attend to. Come find me at the barn when the food is ready, or I will come back in about an hour, whichever comes first." He left her alone in the kitchen, and Beatrice took a deep breath before beginning to explore. She found eggs in a crock, bacon hanging in the cold cellar, potatoes in a bin. The makings of a proper breakfast. She cooked with the focus she brought to all tasks, trying to prove her worth. The stove was different from what she was used to, hotter and more temperamental, but she managed. By the time Vincent returned, she had prepared eggs, bacon, fried potatoes, and biscuits. Not fancy, but hearty and well cooked. Vincent washed up at the pump outside before joining her at the table. He looked surprised at the spread she had laid out. "This is far better than I usually manage." "Thank you, Miss Evans. Please call me Beatrice," she said, sitting across from him. "Miss Evans feels too formal given the circumstances." "Vincent, then. No need for excessive formality between us." They ate in silence for a few minutes. Beatrice watched him from under her lashes, trying to understand this man who had shown her such unexpected kindness. He was tall and broad-shouldered, his face weathered from years in the sun, with lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled often, even if he was not smiling now. His hands were calloused and strong, but he moved carefully, deliberately, like someone conscious of his own strength. "What happened to your family?" she asked, then immediately regretted the question. "I am sorry, that was too personal." "It is a natural question." Vincent set down his fork. "My parents were among the earlier settlers in this area back in the 50s. They built this ranch from nothing. My father died when I was 20, kicked by a horse. My mother passed 5 years ago from pneumonia. I never had siblings. It has just been me here for some time now." "That sounds lonely." "It was. That is why I placed the advertisement." He looked at her directly. "I will be honest with you, Beatrice. I had hoped for a partner, someone to share the work and the life here. This land can be harsh, but it can also be good if you have someone to face it with. That was what I wanted. Not just a wife, but a true partner. And instead you got a frightened girl who knows nothing about ranching," Beatrice said bitterly. "I got someone who had the courage to travel 1,000 miles alone, who chose honesty over deception, and who is trying to find her way in a world that has not been particularly kind to her," Vincent corrected gently. "That takes its own kind of strength." Beatrice felt her throat tighten with emotion. "I do not feel strong. I feel terrified most of the time. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is moving forward despite the fear. You are here, are you not? You did not collapse on that street yesterday, though I could see you wanted to. You are sitting here now, trying to learn a new life. That is courage." They finished breakfast in more comfortable silence. Afterward, Beatrice insisted on cleaning up while Vincent returned to his work. She spent the morning exploring the house and organizing the kitchen to her liking, finding comfort in the familiar tasks. Around midday, she prepared a simple lunch and brought it out to the barn, where she found Vincent working with a young horse. He was patient with the animal, speaking in low, soothing tones as he led it around the corral on a long lead. The horse was skittish but clearly learning to trust him. "That was my mistake yesterday," Vincent said when he saw her watching. "I should have approached you more like I approach these young horses. Slow, careful, giving you space to decide I was not a threat." "I do not think I am quite comparable to a horse," Beatrice said, but she smiled slightly. "The principle is the same. Trust has to be earned, not demanded." He secured the horse and came to the fence. "Is that lunch?" "Just sandwiches and coffee. I did not want to interrupt your work for long." They sat in the shade of the barn, eating and watching the ranch activity. Vincent had about 30 head of cattle visible in the near pastures, and more horses in various corrals. "This is a lot of work for one person," Beatrice observed. "It is. I used to have 2 hands helping, but they moved on to other opportunities. I have been managing alone, but it limits how much I can do. I was hoping a wife might help with some of the lighter tasks, tending the chickens, the garden, keeping the accounts. That would free me up for the heavier work." "I can do those things," Beatrice said eagerly. "I may not know ranching, but I can learn. I can keep accounts. I learned figures well enough in school." "Then we will teach each other," Vincent said. "I will teach you about the ranch and you can help me keep better records. I have been lax about the bookkeeping." Over the following days, they fell into a routine. Beatrice woke early to prepare breakfast, learning Vincent's preferences and quirks. He liked his coffee strong, his eggs cooked through, plenty of bread. After breakfast, she would clean up while he started the day's work. Then she would tackle whatever task needed attention. Laundry, mending, organizing supplies. Vincent taught her about the chickens, showing her how to collect eggs and check for signs of illness. He introduced her to each of the horses, explaining their personalities and quirks. The cattle remained mysterious, large and somewhat frightening to her, but she learned to recognize individuals by their markings. In the evenings, after supper, they would sit on the porch of the main house, and Vincent would tell her about the land, the weather patterns, the challenges and rewards of ranching. Beatrice would listen, asking questions, slowly building a picture of this life so foreign to her own experience. "Winter comes hard here," Vincent told her one evening as they watched the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. "Snow can be 6 feet deep. We can be snowed in for weeks at a time. It is important to be prepared, to have enough supplies laid in, enough hay for the animals." "That sounds frightening," Beatrice admitted. "It can be. But there is beauty in it too. The land under snow is like nothing else, pure and clean. And when spring comes, it is like the world being reborn." Beatrice found herself watching him as he spoke, noticing the way his face softened when he talked about the land, the passion beneath his quiet demeanor. He was not what she had expected from a frontier rancher. He was educated, well-spoken, thoughtful in his words and actions. "How did you learn to read so well?" she asked. "Your letters were beautifully written." Vincent looked surprised by the question. "My mother was a schoolteacher back east before she came west with my father. She insisted I be educated properly. We had books, lots of them. I still have her collection in the house." "I love reading," Beatrice said wistfully. "I have not had access to books in so long." "Then you should explore the house properly. The sitting room has shelves full of books. Consider them yours to read as you wish." Beatrice did exactly that. She discovered that Vincent's mother had possessed an impressive library. Novels, poetry, histories, scientific texts. Beatrice began reading in the evenings after her work was done, sitting in the cabin by lamplight and losing herself in stories of distant places and times. One evening, about 2 weeks after her arrival, Vincent came to her cabin with a small wooden bench. "I thought you might like to sit outside in the evenings. It is pleasant when the weather is good." "That is very thoughtful," Beatrice said, genuinely touched. "Thank you." He set the bench near the cabin door, positioned to catch the evening sun. "I also wanted to say that you have done excellent work these past weeks. The house has never been so well organized, and your cooking is far superior to my own efforts." "I am glad to be useful," Beatrice said. "You have given me so much, it is the least I can do." "You do not owe me, Beatrice. This is not a debt to be repaid. This is two people helping each other." After he left, Beatrice sat on the new bench and tried to sort through her feelings. She was less frightened now, growing accustomed to the rhythms of ranch life. The vast emptiness of the land no longer terrified her quite so much, and Vincent himself had proven to be exactly what he appeared, a good, decent man who treated her with respect and patience. She was also beginning to realize that she was developing feelings for him that went beyond gratitude. It started small. Noticing the way his hair curled slightly at his collar when it needed cutting, the warmth of his rare smiles, the steadiness in his presence. She found herself looking forward to their evening conversations, disappointed on the rare occasions when he was too tired and retired early. But she was only 18, still so young and inexperienced. What did she know about love? And Vincent had made it clear he saw her as someone who needed time to grow up, not as a potential wife. She pushed the feelings down, trying to focus on being useful and learning this new life. Summer began transitioning toward autumn. The days remained warm, but the evenings grew cooler. Vincent began preparing for winter in earnest, and Beatrice helped where she could. They spent long days preserving vegetables from the garden, drying herbs, making sure the root cellar was properly stocked. "We should go into town soon," Vincent said one morning at breakfast. "Stock up on supplies before the weather turns. I also need to pick up some equipment from the blacksmith." "Will we both go?" Beatrice asked, trying to keep the nervousness from her voice. She had not been back to Fort Laramie since the day she arrived. "If you feel up to it." "Martha Henderson at the general store has been asking after you. She is a good woman, someone you might want as a friend." They made the trip on a clear day in late September. Beatrice wore one of her better dresses, wanting to make a good impression. As they rolled into town, she felt Vincent glance at her. "You look nice," he said simply. "Thank you." She felt herself flush with pleasure at the compliment. Fort Laramie was busy with other ranchers and settlers preparing for winter. Vincent handled his business at the blacksmith while Beatrice went with Martha Henderson at the general store. Martha was a plump, friendly woman in her 40s with sharp eyes that missed nothing. "So you are the young lady Vincent took in," she said, not unkindly. "There has been talk, you understand." "I imagine there has been," Beatrice said, lifting her chin. "I am sure people have opinions about our arrangement." "Oh, they do. But Vincent Marlowe has always been a man of honor. Anyone who knows him understands that." Martha leaned closer. "How are you finding life out at the ranch?" "It is good," Beatrice said honestly. "Different from anything I have known, but good. Vincent has been very kind. He is a good man. Lost his parents young, built that ranch up mostly on his own. He deserves happiness." Martha studied Beatrice carefully. "And you, are you happy?" It was such a direct question that Beatrice did not know how to answer. Was she happy? She was safer than she had been in years, better fed, treated with respect and kindness. But she also felt suspended in uncertainty, unsure of her place or her future. "I am content," she said finally. "I am learning to be happy." Martha seemed satisfied with that answer. She helped Beatrice select fabric for a new dress, showing her the latest patterns that had come in from back east. "You should have something nice for when the holidays come," Martha said. "Vincent always attends the church Christmas gathering. It would be good for people to see you both together, stop the worst of the gossip." Beatrice selected a deep green fabric that Martha assured her brought out her eyes. As she paid with the household money Vincent had given her, she thought about the upcoming holidays. Christmas in Wyoming, her first winter in the West. It would be so different from anything she had known. On the ride home, Vincent asked about her visit with Martha. "She is curious about me, about us," Beatrice said. "She wants to make sure your reputation is not being damaged by our arrangement." "Let people talk," Vincent said easily. "Anyone who knows me knows I would not behave improperly, and anyone who does not know me, their opinion does not matter." "Does it not bother you, having people speculate?" "I have lived here long enough to know that people will always find something to talk about. As long as you and I know the truth of our situation, that is all that matters." He paused. "Are you concerned about what people think?" "I suppose I am concerned about causing you trouble. You have been so kind to me." "You have caused me nothing but help and pleasant company," Vincent said firmly. "Do not worry about town gossip." October brought the first real cold, frost sparkling on the grass in the mornings. Vincent and Beatrice worked together to prepare the cabin for winter, adding extra insulation, making sure the fireplace was in good repair, stacking firewood within easy reach. "If we get a bad storm, you come up to the main house," Vincent instructed. "The cabin is solid, but the main house is larger and warmer. I do not want you isolated down here if the weather turns dangerous." "I will be fine," Beatrice assured him, though she appreciated his concern. The first snow came in early November, a light dusting that melted by afternoon. But it was a warning of what was to come. Vincent brought the cattle closer to the ranch buildings, made sure all the equipment was secured and ready. Beatrice found herself marveling at how much she had changed in the 3 months since her arrival. She no longer felt that constant, gnawing fear. She had learned the rhythms of the ranch, the patterns of the seasons. She could collect eggs without the chickens frightening her, could help with basic horse care, could even assist Vincent with minor repairs around the property, and her feelings for Vincent had only grown stronger. She tried to hide it, not wanting to make things awkward between them. But she found herself thinking about him constantly. The way he moved, strong and capable, the gentleness in his hands when he worked with the animals, the kindness in his eyes when he looked at her. She was 19 now, her birthday having passed quietly in October, with Vincent surprising her with a small cake that he had clearly struggled to make. It had been lopsided and slightly burned, but she had been touched to tears by the effort. "I am an adult now," she had said, trying to joke. "Fully grown. You have grown considerably in these months," Vincent had agreed. "You are not the same frightened girl who stepped off that stage coach." But did he see her differently? Or was she still just the girl he had taken pity on? The question haunted her as winter closed in around them. The first major blizzard struck in late November, 3 days of howling wind and driving snow that turned the world white. Beatrice stayed in the cabin the first day, but by the second evening, Vincent appeared at her door, snow-covered and worried. "Pack some things," he said without preamble. "You are coming to the main house. This storm is not letting up, and I will not have you isolated down here." Beatrice knew better than to argue when he used that tone. She quickly gathered necessities and followed him through the blinding snow to the main house. The wind was so strong it nearly knocked her off her feet, but Vincent kept a steady hand on her arm, guiding her safely inside. The main house felt wonderfully warm after the howling cold outside. Vincent had the stove going full blast, lamps lit against the early darkness. "You will take my bedroom," he said, shaking snow from his coat. "I will sleep out here by the stove." "I cannot take your bed," Beatrice protested. "You can and will. It is warmer, more comfortable, and more appropriate." His tone brooked no argument. They spent the next 2 days essentially trapped inside together. Vincent went out periodically to check on the animals, coming back each time covered in snow and half frozen. Beatrice would help him warm up, pressing hot coffee into his hands and making sure he ate properly. Being in close quarters revealed new aspects of each other. Vincent was neater than she expected, methodical in his movements. He read in the evenings, serious books about agriculture and animal husbandry, but also poetry, which surprised her. Beatrice continued with her novels, and they sometimes read passages aloud to each other. "Listen to this," Vincent said one evening, reading from a book of Wordsworth's poetry. His voice was deep and pleasant, the words rolling off his tongue with unexpected grace. When he finished, he looked up to find Beatrice staring at him. "That was beautiful," she said softly, "my mother's influence. She loved poetry, insisted I learn to appreciate it." He smiled slightly. "Not typical rancher education, I suppose." "I think it is wonderful that you appreciate such things. It shows depth of character." Something shifted in the air between them, a new awareness. Vincent looked at her for a long moment, and Beatrice felt her heart race. But then he cleared his throat and went back to his book, the moment passing. The storm finally broke on the 4th day. Vincent ventured out to assess the damage while Beatrice prepared a hearty breakfast. When he returned, he was smiling. "We came through it well. Lost a section of fence, but the animals are all fine. Snow is deep, though. It will be a few days before the paths are clear enough for easy movement." "Then I should stay here a while longer?" Beatrice asked, hoping the answer was yes. "If you do not mind the imposition on your privacy." "It would be safer." "I do not mind at all." Those few extra days felt precious to Beatrice. They cooked together, worked together to clear snow, spent long evenings talking by the fire. Vincent told her stories of his childhood, his parents, the early days of the ranch. Beatrice shared her own memories, the good and bad of her life in Boston, her relationship with her sister that was complicated but not without love. "Have you heard from Sarah?" Vincent asked one evening. "No. I wrote her when I first arrived, letting her know I was safe, but I have had no response. I'm not sure if I will." "That must hurt." "It does. But I also understand. She made her choice and perhaps she feels guilty about it, or perhaps she simply moved on with her life." Beatrice stared into the fire. Sometimes I am angry with her, but sometimes I am grateful. If she had come as planned, I would never have had this opportunity to find my own way. Do you think you have found your way? Vincent asked quietly. Beatrice looked at him, at this good man who had shown her such kindness. I think I am starting to. I know I am happier here than I ever was in Boston. This land does not frighten me anymore. It feels like it could be home. I am glad, Vincent said, and the warmth in his voice made her heart skip. She wanted to say more, to tell him how she felt, but fear held her back. What if he did not feel the same way? What if he still saw her as too young, as the frightened girl he had taken in out of pity? A week after the first major storm, Beatrice finally moved back to the cabin. The paths were clear, and it seemed appropriate to re-establish some boundaries. But she missed the easy intimacy of those days in the main house, missed the constant presence of Vincent nearby. December brought more snow, but no storms as severe as that first one. Vincent continued his daily work, and Beatrice continued hers. They fell back into their routine, but something had changed. There was a new awareness between them, glances that lingered a moment too long, accidental touches that sent electricity through her. One afternoon in mid-December, Vincent came to find her in the kitchen where she was baking bread. I need to ride out to check the north pasture fence. Would you like to come with me? The weather is clear, and I thought you might enjoy the ride. Beatrice had been practicing her riding skills under Vincent's patient instruction. She was competent now, if not confident. I would like that. They saddled 2 horses and rode out together. The land was stunning under its blanket of snow, the sky a brilliant blue overhead. Vincent pointed out landmarks, explained the geography of his property, showed her where he hoped to expand in the future. This land has so much potential, he said, surveying the rolling hills. With proper management, with help, it could support twice the herd I have now, maybe even a small operation breeding horses. There is good money in horses. You have put so much thought into this, Beatrice observed. It is my life's work. Everything I have goes into this ranch. He looked at her. I had hoped to have someone to share these plans with, to build toward the future together. You still could, Beatrice said, her heart pounding, if you found the right person. Vincent was quiet for a long moment. Beatrice, you know that when you first arrived I told you we would wait, that you needed time to grow up, to figure out what you wanted. I remember. It has been 4 months now. You have changed considerably in that time. You are capable, strong, you have adapted to this life in ways I did not expect. He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. I need to know where your head is, what you are thinking about the future. Beatrice took a deep breath, gathering her courage. I am thinking that I do not want to leave, that this ranch feels more like home than anywhere I have ever lived, that the life here, hard as it sometimes is, feels right to me. And what about the other part of our arrangement, the possibility that we might reconsider the original plan? Her heart was beating so hard she thought it might burst. I think about it constantly, about you, about us, about what it might be like to truly be partners, not just in work but in all things. Vincent dismounted and came to stand beside her horse, looking up at her. I need to be honest with you. Somewhere along the way my feelings changed. You are not just a girl I took pity on anymore. You have become someone I admire, someone I look forward to seeing every morning, someone whose happiness matters deeply to me. But I do not want to pressure you. You are still young, still finding your way. Beatrice slid down from her horse to stand facing him. I am not a child anymore, Vincent. I know my own mind. And I know that what I feel for you is not gratitude or dependence. It is something much deeper. What do you feel? He asked softly. I love you, she said simply. I think I have been falling in love with you for months now. The way you treat the animals with such gentleness, the way you read poetry by lamplight, the way you have never once made me feel small or foolish. You have given me time to find myself, and what I have found is that I want to spend my life with you." Vincent reached up to cup her face in his calloused hand. "I love you too. I have been fighting it, telling myself you were too young, that I should not take advantage, but you are right. You are not a child. You are a remarkable woman who has shown more courage and strength than many people twice your age." Then he kissed her, gentle at first, then deeper as she responded. It was Beatrice's first kiss, and it felt like coming home. When they finally pulled apart, both slightly breathless, Vincent rested his forehead against hers. "I want to marry you properly, Beatrice Evans. Not because of some mail-order arrangement, but because I love you and want to build a life with you. But only if you are truly sure." "I have never been more sure of anything," Beatrice said, and she meant it with her whole heart. They rode back to the ranch holding hands as much as the horses would allow, both grinning like fools. When they reached the barn, Vincent helped her dismount and kissed her again, longer this time, his arms wrapped around her. "We should tell Martha Henderson," Beatrice said, laughing. "She was so worried about your reputation. Let her worry. We will make it official soon enough. But first, we celebrate." That evening, Vincent produced a bottle of wine he had been saving and cooked dinner alongside Beatrice in the main house. They talked late into the night about their plans, their hopes for the future. "I want children someday," Vincent said. "A family to fill this house with life and laughter. But not right away. I want time with just you first, to truly know each other as husband and wife." "That sounds perfect," Beatrice agreed. "I want to learn everything about ranching, to be a true partner in this work. And yes, someday, children would be wonderful." They set the wedding for after Christmas. Martha Henderson was delighted to help with preparations, and word spread quickly through the community. The gossip shifted from speculation to approval, as people recognized the genuine affection between Vincent and Beatrice. Christmas Eve of 1876 found Beatrice in the main house, decorating with pine boughs and ribbons. Vincent had cut a small tree and set it up in the sitting room, and they had spent an evening stringing popcorn and making simple ornaments. "This is my first real Christmas in years," Beatrice said as they admired their handiwork. "In Boston, Sarah and I were always working. We had no time or money for celebrations. Then we will make this one special," Vincent promised. He pulled her close, and she rested her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. "I am so grateful I got on that stagecoach," she said softly. "Even though I was terrified, even though nothing went as planned, it brought me here to you, to this life. I would not change any of it. I am grateful, too, for your sister's deception, for your courage in coming west, for your honesty when you arrived. It all led us here." On Christmas morning, Vincent gave Beatrice a beautiful leather-bound journal. "For recording your thoughts, your observations about the ranch, whatever you want. Every good rancher keeps records, and you are going to be a full partner in this operation." Beatrice gave him a scarf she had knitted from wool she had bought in town, her first attempt at such a project. It was slightly uneven, but Vincent wore it proudly, declaring it the warmest scarf he had ever owned. They attended the Christmas gathering at the church in Fort Laramie that afternoon. Beatrice wore her new green dress, and Vincent wore his best suit. They walked in together, and Beatrice felt the eyes of the community on them. But Martha Henderson immediately came to greet them, and her warm welcome set the tone for the rest of the afternoon. People approached to offer congratulations on their upcoming wedding, to welcome Beatrice properly to the community. By the end of the gathering, Beatrice felt truly accepted for the first time since her arrival. "You see," Vincent murmured as they drove home in the wagon, bundled under blankets against the cold. "Nothing to worry about. People here respect honesty and hard work. You have proven yourself on both counts." Their wedding took place on a clear, cold day in early January of 1877. The ceremony was held in the small church in Fort Laramie, with Martha Henderson and her husband standing as witnesses. Beatrice wore her green dress with a new white shawl, and Vincent wore his Sunday best with the slightly crooked scarf she had made him. The vows were simple and traditional, but when Vincent placed the ring on her finger and said, "I do," Beatrice felt tears of joy streaming down her face. This was real. This was her life now, her future. The small gathering of friends and neighbors celebrated with them afterward at the hotel restaurant. There were toasts and laughter, good food and warm wishes. Beatrice found herself surrounded by friendly faces, people who had welcomed her into their community. "You have done well for yourself, young lady," Martha Henderson said, hugging her tight. "And Vincent, he is the luckiest man in Wyoming Territory." "I am the lucky one," Beatrice whispered back. That night, Vincent carried her over the threshold of the main house, which was now officially her home. The cabin would be storage or perhaps used for future ranch hands. This was where she belonged now, with him. Their wedding night was tender and gentle, Vincent patient with her inexperience, showing her the physical expression of the love they shared. Afterward, wrapped in his arms, Beatrice felt a completeness she had never known existed. "I love you, Mrs. Marlowe," Vincent whispered into her hair. "I love you too, more than I can say." The winter passed in a blur of happiness. Beatrice threw herself into learning every aspect of ranch management. Vincent taught her to read the account books, to understand profit and loss, to plan for the future. She helped with calving season when it came in late winter, staying up all night with Vincent to assist difficult births. "You are a natural at this," Vincent said admiringly as she helped a newborn calf find its feet. "Better than many men I have hired over the years." "I had a good teacher," she replied, smiling at him. Spring brought new challenges and new joys. They planted an expanded garden together, with Beatrice planning a more extensive vegetable production than Vincent had ever attempted alone. She started keeping more detailed accounts, organizing the business side of the ranch with the same efficiency she brought to household management. In April, Vincent came in from town with surprising news. "The ranch next to ours is for sale. Old Samuel Peterson passed away last month, and his family back east wants to sell. It would double our land, give us room to expand exactly as we have talked about." "Can we afford it?" Beatrice asked, immediately thinking of their finances. "With careful management, yes. It would be tight for a few years, but the investment would pay off. More land means more cattle, more opportunities." He looked at her seriously. "But this would be a decision we make together. Equal partners." Beatrice felt a surge of pride at being truly consulted, truly valued as a partner. She studied the account books carefully, running numbers, considering possibilities. "I think we should do it. The land is good and we can manage the finances if we are careful. It is a risk, but a calculated one." They purchased the Peterson property in May, and Vincent hired 2 ranch hands to help manage the expanded operation. Beatrice found herself managing the household budget more carefully, planning meals to feed the additional workers, organizing the extra work. She loved every minute of it. Summer brought its own rhythm. Beatrice rose before dawn to prepare breakfast for Vincent and the 2 hands, packed lunches for the men when they rode out to distant pastures, spent her days tending the garden, the chickens, keeping the house and accounts in order. The work was endless, but it was fulfilling in ways her factory work in Boston never had been. In late August, nearly a year after her arrival in Wyoming, Beatrice realized she had missed her monthly courses. She waited another month to be sure, then told Vincent her suspicions. "You are certain?" he asked, his face lighting up with joy. "As certain as I can be without seeing a doctor. We should go into town, have it confirmed properly." The doctor in Fort Laramie confirmed what Beatrice already knew. She was expecting a baby, due sometime in early spring. Vincent was so happy he could barely contain himself, grinning like a fool all the way home. "We are going to be parents," he kept saying, as if he could not quite believe it. "We are going to have a family. Are you ready for sleepless nights and endless crying?" Beatrice teased. "With you by my side, I am ready for anything." The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Beatrice continued working as much as she could, though Vincent insisted she not overdo it. He hovered constantly, worried about her health, driving her slightly crazy with his concern but also touching her deeply with how much he cared. Martha Henderson became a regular visitor, bringing baby clothes and advice. "You are going to do wonderfully," she assured Beatrice. "You have strength in you that many women lack, and Vincent will be a devoted father." As winter closed in again, Beatrice found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her here. Just over a year ago, she had been a terrified girl stepping off a stagecoach into an unknown future. Now she was a woman, a wife, soon to be a mother. She had found love, purpose, a home. The baby came on a cold morning in March of 1878. The labor was long and difficult, but Martha Henderson stayed with them, helping to deliver the child while Vincent paced anxiously in the sitting room. When the baby's cry finally filled the house, Vincent rushed in to find Beatrice exhausted but smiling, holding their son. "A boy," she said softly. "We have a son." Vincent knelt beside the bed, touching the baby's tiny hand with one calloused finger. Tears streamed down his face. "He is perfect." "You are perfect. Thank you, Beatrice. Thank you for this gift." They named him Samuel, after Vincent's father. He was a healthy baby with a strong set of lungs and his father's dark hair. Vincent was completely besotted, spending hours just watching the baby sleep, helping with nighttime feedings even though there was little he could do. "I never knew I could love something so much," he admitted one night, holding Samuel while Beatrice recovered her strength. "You and him, you are everything to me." "And you are everything to us," Beatrice replied, reaching for his hand. The first year of Samuel's life passed in a blur of sleepless nights and overwhelming love. The ranch continued to thrive, the expanded land proving to be as good an investment as they had hoped. They hired a third hand as the operation grew, and Beatrice managed the increased complexity of the household with the efficiency she had developed. On Samuel's first birthday, they held a small celebration at the ranch. Martha Henderson and her family came, along with a few neighbors and the ranch hands. It was a modest affair, but filled with warmth and laughter. "Look at what you have built," Martha said to Beatrice as they watched Vincent playing with Samuel in the sunshine. "A home, a family, a thriving business. You should be proud." "I am," Beatrice said. "When I first arrived here, I could not imagine any of this. I was too scared to see the possibilities. But Vincent gave me time to find myself, and I found more than I ever dreamed possible." That night, after Samuel was asleep and the guests had gone home, Vincent and Beatrice sat on the porch watching the stars emerge. It was a warm spring evening, the air filled with the sounds of the land awakening after winter. "You ever think about how different things could have been?" Vincent asked. "If your sister had come as planned, if I had sent you back to Boston that first day?" "Sometimes. But I do not dwell on it. We made the choices we made and they led us here. I would not change any of it. Even the fear, the uncertainty, even that. It taught me that I was stronger than I thought, that I could adapt, could build a life in a place I never imagined living. And it brought me to you. She leaned against him, his arm coming around her shoulders. "You were so patient with me. You gave me exactly what I needed, even when I did not know what that was." "You gave me something too," Vincent said. "Purpose beyond just the work. A reason to build toward the future. Love I never expected to find." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars wheel overhead. In the distance, a coyote called and the cattle lowed softly in their sleep. The land was alive around them, the ranch they had built together, the life they had created. "I want more children," Beatrice said softly. "Samuel should have siblings, brothers and sisters to grow up with. I want that too." "As many as you are willing to have, as many as we can love and provide for properly." "Then we will have more," Beatrice agreed. "We will fill this house with children and laughter and love. We will build something lasting, something we can pass on to future generations." Vincent kissed the top of her head. "We already have." 2 years later, in the spring of 1881, Beatrice gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Caroline after Vincent's mother. She was smaller than Samuel had been, with Beatrice's lighter coloring and delicate features. Vincent was just as besotted with her as he had been with Samuel, holding her for hours and singing old lullabies his mother had taught him. Samuel, now 3 years old, was fascinated by his baby sister. He would sit beside her cradle for long periods, talking to her in his developing language, bringing her toys to look at. Watching them together filled Beatrice's heart to overflowing. The ranch continued to expand and prosper. Vincent's vision of a horse breeding operation became reality, with several quality mares producing foals that sold for good prices. The cattle operation remained strong, weathering the occasional hard winter or dry summer through careful management and the expanded land base. Beatrice had grown into her role completely. She managed the complex household with easy efficiency, kept detailed accounts of all ranch operations, and even began corresponding with other ranchers' wives, sharing information and strategies. She was no longer the frightened girl who had arrived in Fort Laramie. She was a capable woman, a mother, a full partner in every aspect of their life. In 1883, their third child was born, another boy they named Robert. He was a robust baby, always hungry and always laughing. Samuel and Caroline adored him, fighting over who got to help care for him. "Our family is growing," Vincent said, watching Beatrice nurse the baby while their older children played nearby. "Is this what you imagined when you first came west?" "I could never have imagined this," Beatrice admitted. "It is so much better than anything I dreamed possible. We have built something beautiful here, Vincent. Not just the ranch, but this family, this life. It is everything I did not know I wanted." The years continued to roll past, marked by the rhythms of ranch life and the growth of their children. Samuel showed an early aptitude for working with horses, spending hours with his father learning the skills of ranching. Caroline proved to have her grandmother's love of learning, devouring the books in the house and begging Beatrice to teach her more. Robert was the adventurous one, constantly getting into mischief and keeping everyone on their toes. In 1885, Beatrice gave birth to their fourth and final child, another daughter they named Grace. She was a peaceful baby, content to watch the world around her with wise eyes. With 4 children, the house was constantly filled with noise and activity, exactly as Beatrice had once imagined. "We have our hands full now," Vincent said one evening, surveying their brood at the dinner table. Samuel was 8 now, Caroline 6, Robert 3, and Grace just a few months old. "We certainly do," Beatrice agreed, but her tone was filled with joy rather than complaint. The ranch had expanded to become one of the most successful operations in the area. They employed 5 full-time hands now, had built additional outbuildings and corrals, and their reputation for quality horses had spread throughout Wyoming and into neighboring territories. The financial struggles of the early years were long behind them. On their 10th wedding anniversary in January of 1887, Vincent surprised Beatrice with a proper trip to Cheyenne. They left the children with Martha Henderson, who had become like a grandmother to them, and spent 3 days in the territorial capital. It was the first time Beatrice had been anywhere but Fort Laramie since her arrival in Wyoming. Cheyenne seemed impossibly large and bustling after years on the ranch, but it was exciting to walk the streets, visit shops, attend a concert at the Opera House. "Thank you for this," Beatrice said as they walked arm in arm through the city. "It is wonderful to have this time with just you." "You deserve far more than 3 days in Cheyenne," Vincent replied. "You have worked so hard, given so much." "Sometimes I worry that ranch life is too hard on you, that you miss the comforts of city living." "I miss nothing," Beatrice said firmly. "I love our life, Vincent, every part of it. The work, the children, the land itself. It is exactly where I am meant to be." That night in their hotel room, lying in bed together, Vincent traced the lines of her face with one finger. "You are more beautiful now than the day I met you. You have grown into such a remarkable woman." "I had a remarkable teacher," Beatrice replied. "You showed me how to be strong, how to face challenges, how to build a life worth living. Everything good in my life comes from the chance you took on a frightened girl who showed up instead of the woman you expected. Best decision I ever made, waiting for you to grow into yourself," Vincent said. "I would make it again without hesitation." They returned home to chaos, as Robert had managed to fall from the barn loft while they were gone, breaking his arm. He was fine, the arm healing well under the doctor's care, but it reminded them both of how quickly things could change, how precious their time together was. As the 1880s progressed, the wild nature of the West began to tame. Fort Laramie saw less military activity, more settlers arrived, and civilization crept steadily across the landscape. But the ranch remained their sanctuary, their kingdom built through hard work and love. Samuel, at 12 years old, was already talking about taking over the ranch someday. He had his father's calm demeanor and his mother's sharp mind for business. Caroline, at 10, announced her intention to become a teacher like her grandmother had been, already helping her younger siblings with their lessons. Robert, at 7, was still wild and adventurous, but showing signs of settling into responsible ranch work. And Grace, at 4, was the heart of the family, sweet and loving with everyone she met. On a warm evening in the summer of 1889, the whole family sat on the expanded porch that Vincent had built to accommodate their growing children. The sun was setting over the mountains, painting the sky in brilliant colors. The children were playing a game of their own invention while Vincent and Beatrice watched, hands clasped together. "You remember the first time we sat together on a porch?" Vincent asked quietly. "That first evening after you arrived, when I told you about winter on the plains." "I was so scared of everything," Beatrice recalled. "The land, the loneliness, I could not imagine how I would survive here. And now look at you, look at us. We have built an empire together. Not an empire, a home, something better and more lasting than any empire could be." Samuel approached them then, his face serious. "Papa, Mama, I have been thinking. When I am old enough, I want to expand the horse operation. I have some ideas about breeding programs that could work well." Vincent and Beatrice exchanged amused glances. Their eldest was already planning the ranch's future, just as they had done years ago. "Tell us your ideas," Vincent invited, and Samuel launched into an enthusiastic explanation of his plans. Caroline soon joined in with her own thoughts about keeping better records, organizing information more systematically. Even Robert contributed, suggesting ways to improve the corrals based on his observations. Grace curled up in Beatrice's lap, content to listen to her siblings' plan and dream. Later, after the children had been put to bed and the house was finally quiet, Vincent and Beatrice stood in the doorway of their bedroom, looking down the hall at the closed doors hiding their sleeping children. "We did this," Beatrice said softly. "We created all of this from nothing but hope and hard work." "From love," Vincent corrected. "Everything else came from that foundation." They made love that night with the tenderness of long familiarity, their bodies knowing each other completely after 12 years together. Afterward, Beatrice lay with her head on Vincent's chest, listening to his heartbeat, feeling the steady rise and fall of his breathing. "I need to tell you something," she said quietly. "I think I might be pregnant again." Vincent's arms tightened around her. "Are you certain?" "Not yet. But the signs are there. I know my body well enough by now to recognize them. How do you feel about it? 5 children is already more than we planned." "I feel blessed," Beatrice said honestly. "Overwhelmed sometimes, but blessed. Every child has been a gift, and if there is another, that will be a gift too." The doctor confirmed her pregnancy in September. The baby would arrive sometime in the spring of 1890. The children were excited about another sibling, especially Grace, who was thrilled at the prospect of being a big sister. This pregnancy was harder on Beatrice than the previous ones. She was older now, her body more worn from years of hard work and multiple pregnancies. Vincent insisted she rest more, taking over many of her usual household duties despite her protests. "You have taken care of all of us for years," he said firmly. "Let us take care of you now." The children stepped up admirably. Caroline, at 11, proved capable of managing much of the cooking and household organization. Samuel helped his father with ranch work while also watching over his younger siblings. Even Robert and Grace contributed, taking on age-appropriate chores without complaint. The baby came on a warm day in late April of 1890, another daughter they named Hope. The name felt appropriate for the child born as a new decade dawned, a symbol of their continued blessings and bright future. 5 children, Vincent marveled, holding tiny Hope while their other children crowded around to see their new sister. "We have been truly blessed." "We have," Beatrice agreed from the bed, exhausted but happy. "Our family is complete now." She was 32 years old, Vincent was 42, and their children ranged from newborn Hope to 13-year-old Samuel. The house they had filled with love and laughter felt complete in a way Beatrice could not quite articulate. As Hope grew from infant to toddler, the family settled into new rhythms. Samuel was increasingly involved in ranch operations, working alongside his father as a true partner. Caroline had indeed taken on teaching responsibilities, holding lessons for her younger siblings and even a few children from neighboring ranches, whose parents paid for the instruction. Robert had calmed considerably, channeling his energy into productive work with the horses. Grace was the family's heart, always ready with a hug or kind word, and Hope was the baby, adored by everyone. The ranch continued to thrive. Vincent and Samuel's combined efforts resulted in several successful breeding seasons, with their horses gaining regional recognition. The cattle operation remained solid, and they had even begun experimenting with new agricultural techniques Caroline had read about in Eastern journals. In 1893, Wyoming achieved statehood, and Vincent traveled to Cheyenne for the celebration. He returned full of excitement about the opportunities statehood would bring. "This territory is growing up," he told Beatrice, "just like our children are growing up, Everything is changing, evolving. But some things stay the same, Beatrice said. This ranch, this family, our love. Those things are constant. On their 20th wedding anniversary in January of 1897, the family organized a surprise celebration. The children had been planning for weeks, decorating the house, preparing special foods, even creating a program of entertainment. Samuel and Caroline performed a dramatic reading. Robert played the harmonica he had taught himself. Grace sang a sweet song, and even 4-year-old Hope recited a short poem. Beatrice was moved to tears by the effort and love her children had poured into celebrating their parents' marriage. Vincent could not stop smiling, pulling her close and whispering, "This is what we built. Not just the ranch, but this. A family full of love and joy." Later that night, alone in their room, Vincent gave Beatrice a carefully wrapped package. Inside was a beautiful leather journal, similar to the one he had given her years ago but more elaborate, with her initials embossed on the cover in gold. "For recording the next chapter of our story," he said. 20 years together, and I look forward to 20 more, and 20 after that." "I love you," Beatrice said, kissing him deeply. "More today than 20 years ago, which I would not have thought possible. You are my heart, Vincent. You always will be." As the 19th century drew toward its close, the Marlowe Ranch stood as a testament to what two people could build with love, patience, and determination. The frightened 18-year-old girl who had stepped off that stagecoach in Fort Laramie in 1876 had grown into a confident woman, a devoted mother, a skilled ranch manager, and a beloved wife. Samuel was approaching his 20s now, ready to truly take on partnership in the ranch operations. Caroline had her teaching school on the property, educating not just her siblings but a dozen children from neighboring ranches. Robert was developing a reputation as the best horse trainer in the region. Grace was growing into a kind, thoughtful young woman. And Hope was still their baby, bright and curious about everything. On a summer evening in 1899, the whole family gathered on the porch as they had countless times before. But this time was special. Samuel had just announced his engagement to a young woman from a neighboring ranch, a capable girl who had grown up in frontier life just as he had. "I want what you and Papa have," Samuel said to his parents. "The partnership, the love, the life built together. That is what I hope to create with Mary." Beatrice looked at her eldest son, seeing so much of Vincent in him, and felt her heart swell with pride. "You will have it. You have learned from watching us, and you will bring your own strengths to your marriage. We are so proud of you, Samuel." Vincent cleared his throat, clearly emotional. "The ranch will be yours someday, son. Yours and your siblings, to continue building on what your mother and I started. But more important than the ranch is the love you build. That is what truly lasts." As the evening deepened and the stars emerged, the family stayed together on the porch, talking and laughing, sharing stories and dreams. Beatrice sat with Vincent's arm around her shoulders, surrounded by the children they had raised and the life they had built, and felt a contentment so profound it was almost overwhelming. "Thank you," she whispered to Vincent. "For what?" "For seeing potential in a frightened girl. For giving me time to find myself. For building this beautiful life with me. For loving me every day for over 20 years. For everything." Vincent pulled her closer, kissing her temple. "Thank you for having the courage to step off that stagecoach, for choosing honesty over deception, for growing into the most remarkable woman I have ever known, for loving me back, for giving me this family, this life. You are my greatest blessing, Beatrice." The years continued forward, as years always do. Samuel married his Mary, and they built a home on the ranch property, beginning the next generation of Marlowes to work the land. Caroline eventually met a young doctor who came through Fort Laramie, fell deeply in love, and married him, though she continued her teaching work. Robert took over the horse breeding operation completely, expanding it beyond anything Vincent had imagined. Grace married a rancher from the next county, a good man who treated her like the treasure she was. And Hope, the baby, showed every sign of following in her mother's footsteps, capable and smart and kind. Through it all, Vincent and Beatrice remained the heart of the family. They grew older together, their hair turning gray, their bodies showing the wear of decades of hard work. But their love only deepened, aged like fine wine into something rich and complex and irreplaceable. On a warm spring day in 1905, nearly 30 years after Beatrice first arrived in Wyoming, Vincent fell ill. It started as a simple cold but developed into pneumonia. Despite the doctor's best efforts and Beatrice's devoted nursing, he grew weaker. The family gathered around his bedside in the room he had shared with Beatrice for so many years. Samuel and his Mary were there with their 3 children. Caroline came from town with her husband and 2 boys. Robert brought his wife and baby daughter. Grace arrived with her husband and 4-year-old son. And Hope, now 15, sat close to her mother, holding her hand. Vincent looked at each of them, his face reflecting pride and love. "I have been so blessed," he said, his voice weak but clear, "to have this family, this life. Beatrice, my love, you made all of this possible." "We made it together," Beatrice said through her tears, gripping his hand. "Everything we built together." "Promise me you will be happy," Vincent said, "that you will keep living, keep loving this land and this family. You have so much life left to live." "I promise," Beatrice whispered, though she could not imagine life without him. Vincent passed peacefully that evening, surrounded by everyone he loved. He was 57 years old and he had lived a good life, a full life, a life of purpose and love. The funeral was held at the church in Fort Laramie, and it seemed like half the state attended. Vincent had been respected throughout the region, known as a fair man, a skilled rancher, a devoted husband and father. Person after person came to Beatrice to share memories, to express condolences, to assure her that Vincent's legacy would live on. She appreciated their words, but the grief was still overwhelming. For 30 years, Vincent had been her partner, her love, her home. Learning to exist without him felt impossible. But she had made him a promise, and Beatrice Marlowe kept her promises. She threw herself into ranch work, managing operations alongside Samuel, who was now the primary rancher. She remained active in her children's lives, delighting in her growing number of grandchildren. She continued living in the main house, surrounded by memories, but also surrounded by love. One afternoon, about a year after Vincent's passing, Beatrice sat on the porch watching Samuel work with a young horse in the corral. His movements were so like his father's, patient and confident, and it made her heart ache. Hope came to sit beside her, now a young woman of 16. "You are thinking of Papa," she said softly. "I always think of him," Beatrice admitted. "Every day, multiple times a day, I see him in all of you in this ranch and everything we built together." "Tell me again how you met," Hope requested. "The real story." So Beatrice told it, as she had many times over the years. The story of a frightened 18-year-old girl who stepped off a stagecoach into an unknown future, and the gentle rancher who saw her fear and offered her the most precious gift, time to find herself. "He loved you so much," Hope said when the story was finished. "It is the kind of love I hope to find someday." "You will," Beatrice assured her. "You have the strength and intelligence to build a good life, whatever path you choose. Your father and I taught you that. And when you find the right person, someone who treats you as an equal partner, someone who gives you room to grow while standing beside you. Hold onto them with everything you have. Hope hugged her mother tight. I will, I promise. Beatrice lived for another 20 years, active and engaged until the end. She saw all her children happily settled, met and loved dozens of grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren. She remained the heart of the family, the keeper of stories, the reminder of where they had come from and the love that had built their legacy. She passed away peacefully in her sleep on a summer night in 1925, at the age of 67. Her children and many of her grandchildren were at the ranch when it happened, gathered for a summer celebration. They found her in the morning in the bed she had shared with Vincent for so many years, a peaceful expression on her face, the journal he had given her for their 20th anniversary clasped to her chest. At her funeral, Samuel spoke about his mother's courage, her strength, her unwavering love. Caroline read the poem her mother had loved, one Vincent used to read to her. Robert shared stories of her laughter, her wisdom, her gentle guidance. Grace talked about her kindness, her ability to make everyone feel valued and loved. And Hope, the youngest, told the story of the frightened girl and the gentle rancher one more time, so that the next generation would understand where their family had begun. Beatrice was laid to rest beside Vincent on a hill overlooking the ranch they had built together. Their graves were marked with simple stones that bore their names, the years of their lives, and a single inscription: "Together in all things forever." The ranch continued on through the generations, always in the Marlowe family, always worked with the same dedication and love that Vincent and Beatrice had brought to it. Their story became family legend, told and retold to children and grandchildren, a testament to the power of patience, kindness, and true partnership. The frightened 18-year-old girl who had arrived in Fort Laramie in August of 1876 had grown into a woman whose legacy extended far beyond her own life. She had found love, built a family, created a home on the frontier, and in doing so had proven that sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected beginnings. And somewhere beyond the reach of time, Vincent and Beatrice were together again, their love eternal and unbreakable, watching over the family and the land they had loved so much.